So this is for all of you comic creators out there. I know so many of you are struggling to find a good printer, figure out a lot of the terminology. This is your chance to learn everything you can when it comes to printing comics. I have Sandon from Falls Printing. How you doing?
Doing good, everybody?
You've worked your way up at Falls Printing. You actually started off as a graphic artist. What can you tell us about that?
So I'm old. So 1992, my brother managed a printing shop in Salt Lake City. I graduated, didn't know what I was going to do with my life. So he's like, hey, I can have you running a press here. I didn't even know what a press was at the time. Anyways, moved down to Salt Lake, ran a press for a couple of years, a printing press, and it was labels at that point, but still a printing shop. Ran the shift from like 5 to midnight. I forget. It was just the night shift. Did a couple other things, moved around, got out of the printing industry for a few years, and then ended up coming back. My wife at the time, I don't know, I knew that I wanted to do something with art. And at that point, computers were starting to become a thing. Remember, I'm old. Mm-hmm. And they were like, I heard about Photoshop. And I heard about Illustrator. InDesign, I don't even think was a thing yet. It was Quark. So I begged her, I'm just like, can I get a computer and can I just get Photoshop and Illustrator? And I just want to start learning it. So I self-taught myself for about a year, just playing with things, figuring things out, manipulating photos, playing with Illustrator. And then my brother had moved back here to Idaho since then and was managing another print shop. And was like, hey, I got a graphic designer spot if you want to. So he got me a job twice, pulled me back into printing. So I got back into the pre-press department there. They kind of finished teaching me the actual press part of it because before I'd only run a press. So then I was doing the graphic stuff. Cool guys, they helped me out. Slowly worked my way up there to being manager there of the pre-press department. Went to another print shop. Actually, we got bought out. So I was manager of that pre-press shop too. Graphics department, and then I made the move over to Falls as a graphic artist. So long story short, I bounced through some print shops, came over to Falls Printing, was a graphic artist there for 12 years. But during that 12 years, it was kind of weird. They just threw me wherever they wanted. For a year, they threw me into like customer service sales. Then they pulled me back into graphics. And then they sent me over. I did plates for a year. So I kind of got to learn everything. And what's interesting is there was other graphic artists at the time. There was 5 of us. They refused to learn all these other things. And I was the other one that's like, okay, I didn't know I had a choice. So I learned all these things. So here's the deal though. By the end, everybody else they let go because Sandon they could throw me in any department and I knew what I was doing. I could fill in. And so then about 5 years ago, to cut the story short, they removed the manager at the time and they said, hey, you're managing Falls Printing now. And so I went from graphic artist to managing the print shop. And it actually makes sense looking back because I understood the whole process, having been bounced around for years, in and out, clear up to customer service, everything. It wasn't easy though. The first 2 years that was stressful. And then, then I got the hang of it. I was a graphic artist forever. And then I was thrown into managing 17 people. And that was the owner, Jason Harris. He told me, he said, hey, this is going to be the biggest challenge you've ever had, the hardest thing you've ever done. And he was right. So, I still design. I can't get it out of me. So I'm always fiddling.
Nor should you get it out of you.
No. So I'm always fiddling around, like redesigning stuff, playing with, our logo, other people's logos, like when I have time. I can't let that go. So like
that's the key, when you have time.
When I have time. And the owner likes to throw stuff my way to be like, hey, design this. Do you have time to design that? Which is great because it gives me an opportunity to still be a part of that. Does that make sense? I would have a very hard time if they're like, hey, we're throwing you in another office now to manage this place and we're giving you a PC and you don't have the Adobe Creative Suite. That would freak me out. I'd be like, no. I need these programs to to function, and it's hard to let go. But but it's also nice. I have really, really enjoyed having graphic artists take that position from me. It was time. It was a natural progression.
For typical comics, we use saddle stitch. What is that exactly?
Saddle stitch is 2 staples, usually, sometimes 3, just depending. But we have a bigger stitching station where we can do 3. We can also do 2 on that as well. But saddle stitching is just 4 pages. You have to have 4 pages so that when it closes, there's a place for the staple to go. So you can't go in increments of 2. It has to be in increments of 4 pages. So 4 pages, 8 pages, 12 pages, 16 pages, so forth. So divisible by 4 for saddle stitch.
Now for larger trade paperbacks or graphic novels, we see more adhesive bindings. How does that work?
Yeah, so perfect binding, that's where square fold, perfect bind, kind of the same thing. There's a square edge. You can tell that it's glued in there. Finish it, glue it, apply the cover. There's a whole process there. The only gotcha on some of those is sometimes there's minimum quantities that you've got to hit, whether that be 200, 250, 500.
Okay.
So there's so many variables that I couldn't just spit out like you have to order 500. It would depend on how many pages, the size, but that's an option. Yeah, perfect bounding. I don't know about the comic world, but like in the regular just world, printing has changed so much in the last 10 years that like it's rare that we get a perfect bound now. Almost everything is saddle stitch. And I think just because of the cost of perfect binding, it is more expensive, more labor intensive, all of that, that I think a lot of people have just opted for saddle stitching, especially the last 5 years. It's really taken a dramatic turn.
Now, with saddle stitching, is there a maximum number of pages?
Yeah, it's so again, it's this is that variability thing. There's so many different types of paper that I can't just say it's 96 pages or 84 pages because it depends on the cover weight, or if you're even doing a cover, depends on the guts, as we call it, what weight that's on. If you go like a 60-pound, a really light paper, you can obviously get more guts in there. But yes, there's a maximum before that thing just won't sandwich. It won't go through on some of the lightest paper, we've pushed it to about 96 pages, but that's without a cover. So like that's without like a thick cover paper. It's just what we call a self cover. Like it would be all on 60-pound text, which I'm sure everybody's familiar with. So text weight is, the thinner, cover weight being the thicker, sturdier. Again, variables, just shooting out kind of some round numbers here. Yeah, we've done some 96 saddle stitch, but if you were to put a cover on that, my guess is you'd have to go down to in the 80-page range to get a cover on that.
A lot of times with comic books, we're dealing with the different size of comic itself. There's the modern age comic, which is 6.6 inches by 10.3. There's the golden age, which is 6.75 by 10.38. The silver age is 7 by 10.38. Manga, it's kind of weird dimensions. It's either 5.04 inches by 7.17 or 5.83 by 8.2. What are you able to accommodate with those as far as the printer goes?
So on both ends, you run into some problems when you go large and when you go very small. So for example, we have a Xerox Iridescent printer, really nice printer. It will saddle stitch, fold, cut, everything. You put in a PDF of 36 page plus cover, outspits your finished product. Now, the size limit is you can't go under 5.5, 8.5. So that's the smallest you can go is 5.5, 8.5. And then the largest you can go is, and the 8.5 being the saddle stitch edge. And then the biggest you can go, I believe, is 12 inches tall with the staples on that side by, I think, 8.75 is about the biggest you can go. Now, if we move on to a bigger press, we can start playing with some bigger ones. It would just depend on the size. It would be a case-by-case thing. And a lot of it just being paper availability still. COVID really, really did a number on paper availability. Last year, we could hardly get a sheet of cover paper last year. It's slowly changing, but yeah, once you get into, I'm just going to call them odder sizes, versus 8.5 by 11 or smaller. Once you go bigger, getting a hold of some of those sheets is sometimes challenging. But again, it's a case by case. The one you mentioned, 5 inches by, or 5.
The manga size,
5.04, because the 5.83 we could even do on our digital. And let me back up here too. Our digital press, the reason we got it is 10 years ago, if you printed a magazine, you knew you had to print 2,000 plus to even make it cost efficient. The reason we bought our digital is you can literally, I think we do have a limit on it that you need to print, but I mean, that may be like 15, 25, but you can literally do 15 or 25 copies now versus having to pay for 2,000 of them. The cost per piece, of course, is a little bit more, but still you're only buying, 15, 25, 30. There's a benefit to going digital now versus the big press if you're creating content where you want to be able to change it weekly, monthly, whatever. We used to sell people on like, oh my gosh, go big, 4,000, 5,000, 6,000, get your money's worth to make that per piece come down. And now we find ourselves doing the opposite. We're like, do you really need 2,000? Do you need 3,000? Or do you need 500 right now? Because we could throw 500 on our digital versus, the longer process of a bigger press, traditional stitching, binding, folding, all of that.
That's where you're coming up with the plates and everything like that.
Exactly. So we find ourselves kind of in a funny thing where we're now steering people to the opposite of what we've told them for years. But it saves them money too. They're not having to fork out a huge chunk right then. And in this day and age, a lot of people do change their mind. I mean, comics is a little bit different, but most of our clients, they like the freedom now to be able to change, like, oh yeah, I'll do that for this month, and the next month I'm going to change this, and this, and change some pictures, do another 500 of them or 1,000. And that's kind of the sweet spot too. So say you were to do a comic book on our digital, the sweet spot would be between 500 and 1,500 off of the digital. After that, it makes more money sense to go to our big press. So once you get hit 15,000, 2,000, 3,000, that's where you go to the big press anyways, because it's going to save you money. But up until that range, if you printed 500 off of a traditional press, it's going to cost you some big bucks because of the plates, the setup, the folding, the labor to it. Whereas 500 on the digital, you're actually going to save money and save time quicker. It's one of those things that you feed it the PDF. If we have paper on hand and it's in line, it can be, spit off sometimes that day, couple of days, a lot quicker than traditional press where it's got to dry for 3 days. And then it's got to fold for 3 days. And then it's got to get on the stitch. You're oftentimes looking a lot longer timer.
What's the turnaround time for the digital?
So, like everything, we only have one digital press. Some weeks we're slammed. And so we tell people it's going to be, 7 to 12 business days. Other times we can get it to them the next day. That's also by, hey, give us a call. We'll let you know where we're at. We'll let you know our timeline.
This one, it's kind of an oddball question. I seen this on Kickstarter a long time ago. Somebody was offering a comic, and one of the tiers, you could actually get the plates that they use to print it.
Oh yeah, yeah.
I was like, that's so cool.
Yeah. I mean, because we send them to the recycler is where we send those plates. I mean, they do give us a little bit of kickback, but it's not like we're getting rich off of them. So yeah, that's an option. If somebody ever wanted the actual printing plates, that we could figure that in. Yeah, I'd have to look at that. We haven't had anybody request it yet, but yeah, it's like I say, they're going to the recycler. We get a little bit of a kickback to the recycler, but now, for each side, you've got 4 plates. So 16 pages, you would literally have 8 plates: cyan, magenta, yellow, black on one side, cyan, magenta, yellow, black on the other. So 8 plates per 16 pages. And they're big. Yeah, they're big plates. We run 16-page signatures. We have a 40-inch press. I think we're still the biggest in the area with our 40-inch press. I'm pretty sure.
Can you actually explain what a signature is?
Yeah, so a signature is literally, so pretend this is 25.5 inches by 38 inches. And on here, you're going to have 8 pages here, 8 pages here. And once they'll print it, print the back, print the front, and then it's going to go into a folder where it folds that thing down.
I'm assuming it folds it a lot nicer.
It does. Folds it down into one of these. And then you can imagine so this is 16 pages. So if you had 32, you'd have another one here. And they obviously are going to go into each other, and then that's where it's going to staple after we have a folder stitcher that puts them all together. They literally drop down off this rail onto each other. Boom, staple, goes into a 3-knife trimmer that trims off those 3 edges and spits out your finished product. And the digital's actually doing the same thing. It's just literally doing it in line right after it prints, because the ink obviously just dries. It's baked at like 500 degrees off the digital. And there is a difference between digital and traditional printing press. I'm not going to say one's better than the other. I personally prefer the digital. It's more vibrant. It's sitting on top of the paper. I kind of view it as baked plastic on top of the paper, for lack of a better word. It's punchier. I feel it's not to scare people off, though. It's not like it's super glossy or anything. It's just, it feels like I like the image better. Whereas traditional press, it's great, all of that, but you're dealing more with ink going into the paper to a certain degree, drying, possibly sometimes, I don't want to say changing color, but obviously it, changes a little color once it dries. Whereas the digital, it is what it is. You spit it off. I shouldn't use the word punchy, but it's very colorful, crisp.
Just more vibrant in general.
More vibrant. Yeah. Not better. There is people who prefer the traditional press look more, but yeah, I like the digital, I think.
I'm picturing a scenario where a creator, they're on Kickstarter, they got their book done, they send it to you for printing, it gets printed, shipped out to everybody. Now they're like, well, I need to go to a convention where I'm going to be selling some of these. What's the process to get more printed, essentially?
Yeah, we store everything, so everything's cataloged. I mean, so it'd literally be them shooting an email, a phone call, hey, ordering more of that. We usually, depending on how many of them, we'd usually shoot them a proof again just to say, hey, just making sure before we hit go, this is the one you want more of, and they usually give their thumbs up, whatever. And then, yeah, just a reprint, no change, or a reprint with change. Like they're like, oh crap, we realized we spelt something really bad. We corrected it. Here's the new file. Yeah. And then, so yeah, we do store. I've had people ask how long we store files. I think we have files going back to like 2008 at this point on our server. Yeah.
So there's no real chance of, hey, I just sent it to you a month later. I'm like, I need more.
And us losing it. Yeah, no. It's everything's backed up. Yeah. Like I say, you're probably safe for quite a while. Yeah.
A lot of places actually charge for those proofs.
Yeah, we don't charge for a proof. We just, it's a PDF proof. We used to, full disclosure. So we used to live and die by an Epson proof. So we would get a project and we'd have the huge, large Epson printer that we would pay thousands of dollars to have people come in and, color specialists fingerprint it to our press so that, what people saw in the Epson was exactly what's going to come off the press. I've watched at least 10 expensive fingerprints in different print shops at this time. They never nail it. It never gets close. An Epson printing process is never going to match a traditional printing press. My point being that we got away from that probably about 4 or 5 years ago. And when I say got away about it, people actually stopped asking for Epsons. So everything's just PDF now. So we send a PDF proof. In fact, we don't even offer Epson hard proofs anymore. We don't even offer that. And mostly because the digital, we can literally get them one off of there. Just, a finished product, like a one sample. And we could also work out a price with somebody if they're literally like, hey, I want you guys to print one just to color approve it, see exactly what it's going to look like. We could obviously price that out, ship that to them. That way they could feel it, hold it, see what they're going to get before we ever printed anything. And that would be for those smaller quantities, 500 to 1,500. I mean, we could possibly push 2,000 off of there. But again, you start getting the territory, it makes more sense to go to the traditional press. Whereas the traditional press, though, it does not match the color of the digital press. Now, they're not night and day difference, but there's obviously some differences there. So if someone expects those two to match, it's just not going to happen. And on the big traditional press, we can't just shoot you one copy. You're going to be getting 2,500 or more copies off. Sorry, I take that back. We could get you one copy. Yet we would still end up having to make 500 just to get that one copy at least, and the price would be astronomical for that one copy we send you. Yeah, digital. People are going digital, and the biggest thing is because of low quantity. A lot of people don't want to, and I mean, unless you're just killing it, blowing it through, a lot of people don't want to be sitting on 2,000, 3,000, 5,000, 10,000 magazines anymore. They want to be sitting on about 500 they can sell, knowing that they can call up and say, hey, need another 500, need another 250. Things are slow now. I only need 150, and I'm going to make some changes to it. Sometimes color changes. I noticed that, your digital printer looks like this when I do this. So I'm going to make some adjustments, see what it looks like next time.
It's kind of what I wanted to get into next. So we see a lot of comic creators these days with various programs like Procreate, Photoshop, Affinity Photo, Comic Draw, Studio Pro, or Manga Studio, depending on which version you have. So they're building it with a lot of RGB instead of CMYK. Can you walk our audience through kind of the difference between the two and how to adjust back and forth?
So RGB, coming from the photography world, so I did photography for 15 years, lived in the RGB world with the wider color gamut, those greens, those blues. Once you go into the CMYK, it's just it's the killer of that big, color spectrum you had to deal with at first. So CMYK does squash some colors. I noticed mostly in the blues and the greens myself. does change some of it. It just doesn't have that wide of a color gamut of, you say your computer screen that's, RGB.
I will say this though, this has nothing to do with like false printing. This is just
Yeah.
printing in general. The
Yeah.
nature of RGB, which is backlit, essentially. Think your screen, anything that you would look at on a screen. CMYK is anything that you would look at printed.
Yep. And what it is, it's literally using the color cyan, magenta, and black to make up your entire image. So it is, and I know RGB, you would think, well, that's only 3 colors. CMYK should be better. It's not. It's just, without getting into all the technicalities, it's not. CMYK is still great. It's what you've looked at your whole life, magazines, Sears catalog in the bathroom. That's what you're used to it, all of that. But there are people who have a hard time. They've built these just super vibrant colors. And again, I say these greens and these blues and, even reds, and then they'll go to print it even off their desktop printer. It's like, that's not what it looks like. And it's because it had to compress it down to that. Or even if you don't know that's happening, it's still being converted to, whatever printer you're going to. And a professional printer like us is going to be CMYK. Even on our digital, same thing, CMYK. Our big, $2 million Heidelberg press, CMYK. So it does it. So you're better off in Photoshop, wherever, going ahead and just doing the pane right there, converting it to CMYK. Watch your colors come down to what they're actually gonna, look like more. So I use Procreate for my tattoos, and I actually haven't paid attention to RGB versus CMYK mode in there. Well, I'm doing a lot of just black and white stuff too, but is there RGB and CMYK settings in?
Yeah, I have Procreate set up for CMYK to begin with, just from the get-go. So that way, I'm never disappointed. Now, the one thing I can't do on Procreate or anything like that is a lot of the PMS colors.
Yeah.
What can you tell us about that?
So funny, we were having a discussion today with my front manager gal. We used to do a lot of PMS colors. Man, same thing as Perfect Bound. It's very rare that we get a PMS color now. It's usually just not worth the cost. And I asked her, I said, so we use a lot of outsourced places too that have partnered up with us. We partner with them. And so we started sending our spot colors, PMS colors to them because they started specializing just in PMS colors. And she told me today that they're getting away from the PMS color thing. A lot of places are just going CMYK. And again, it's because of the cost, all of that. And digital printers are getting better. And, depending which one, who you're working with, you can usually get pretty close to what you want on a CMYK like digital printer. Now, here's the deal. I've been in the print world long enough. I get it. People are screaming probably right now, being like, no, I want that, 185, isn't that red, or 485 red. And it needs to be that exact same thing. If you're that person, you're that person and you have to have that red, then there is options, but it just gets pricier.
Well, even like Adobe, if I remember right, quit.
Oh, yeah. They stopped supporting PMS.
That's the word I was thinking.
Yeah. No, there's a real, and I don't know if there's a battle going on there, but I think a lot of it's cost. We have to order a huge canister. If somebody wants, 322, we have to order a huge canister. We're most likely never, ever going to use that for another client again. And so we're stuck buying a pound of that ink that's going to sit on the shelf and go bad. And so that, of course, that cost has to be carried on to the customer. So a lot of people are just finding like, maybe I don't need it, that exact 485. I can live with the digital version that looks really, really close.
There's a lot of PMS colors that, I'm sitting there with CMYK and the PMS colors side by side. I don't see a difference at all.
Yeah.
And I mean, these are clients that are actually, paying for stuff.
Sure.
Like, I want this PMS color. I'm like, that's an extra cost.
And look, this hurts some graphic designers' feel bads, and I have over the years. But I'll still stick with it. Is as a designer, you might care. Most of your clients couldn't tell you that they don't care. They couldn't tell you the difference. The end user, prove me wrong. They're not going to look at something. Holy crap. They went the extra mile and got that, 322 uncoded, spot color on here. Holy crap. It's just, no, I get it. It can make a difference. I probably have people screaming at me right now. Look, I've been in the print world a long time. I know the difference. We still get PMS colors. Again, though, I've had to talk to people and be like, we had one client recently, I won't know the name, just stressing over this green on their business cards, and it was something else. And it was just this hard realization of like, nobody cares. The green you're getting is like this close to that PMS color that you were aiming for, and nobody cares. The person you give that to, all they're seeing is green. You as a graphic artist, you're seeing these 15 different greens and you're going for this one. But the end user, again, I'm sure I'm getting a lot of people just being like, this guy's the worst. It was hard at first because I went into printing just so excited to be a graphic artist, and it was soul crushing realizing the end user a lot of times didn't appreciate like even what I was trying to design for them or do for them. Now, I'm not saying it doesn't matter and your comics can look like crap. So I'm not saying that. Let me backtrack just a little bit. But I am saying sometimes, like, I think graphic artists get a little carried away about how important it is to have some of these things. Does that make sense?
You know, with the comic world, it's a little different. I think the customer isn't going to necessarily notice, but the creator will.
Yeah, and that's what I'm saying. Yeah, and here, if it's about the creator and seeing that, then yeah, they pay the extra money, they get the PMS color, and they go to bed feeling good at night.
You kind of mentioned this before when we were talking about binding stuff, but the paperweight.
So to make it really simple, and everybody's probably listening familiar with this, you've got your cover weight, and then you've got your text weight. Text is also referred to as book. So book and text are the same thing. And then you've got cover weight. Cover weight, generally what we run for our house stocks, we start at 80-pound cover and go on clear up to 130-pound cover. As far as text, book weight, we go from 60-pound clear up to 100-pound text. And so, there are different categories, covers, thicker, heavier. So 100-pound cover is not equivalent to 100-pound text. The ins and outs of that, I don't know. The lady who taught me, 20 years ago, she says, don't even worry about it. It'll warp your mind because it used to be based off of like pallets and how much they weighed and things that don't even matter anymore. So 100-pound text, 100-pound cover, completely different, thicknesses, weights, all of that. And then, of course, you run into, you've got coated versus uncoated. Coated has a coating on it. The ink sits differently on it. Uncoated, it's literally uncoated. It doesn't have that coating. The ink seeps into it more. And oddly enough, uncoated takes a lot longer to dry. Now, this isn't digital. This is traditional press. It takes a lot longer to dry than coated paper. And in fact, my guys in the back who have been doing it for 60 years claim that, uncoated never really truly dries. You can always kind of smudge it. Anyways, it takes a lot longer versus if you have a gloss paper. So you also have gloss and dull in coating. So you've got gloss, dull. A lot of people can't even tell the difference between gloss and dull. Like you look at two, one reflects a little bit more. They're very, very close. Gloss actually dries the quickest. Not that that matters to anybody, but it seems like the more that the ink sits on top of the page, faster drying time than say dull or uncoated. Most people prefer dull though. I prefer dull as well. You get less reflection when you're looking at something in the light.
Personally, the inside, like the actual comic pages themselves, I kind of like them more dull. That way it's just easier to read. Like if you got a light on and all of a sudden you got a glare and you're trying to hold the comic, you miss some detail because you're seeing a reflection, which is weird inside of a book.
And, to add to that, this is where it's getting even trickier. Everything's going to digital. And look, everything is going to digital. Traditional presses aren't dead yet. They won't be for a while, but digital is going to take over everything. So you're
talking about the digital presses, not necessarily the digital comics. And
digital press, digital printers. So what people don't realize is, so we run almost exclusively, almost without exception, only dull off of our digital printer. Reason being is, with the digital printer, like I say, it throws that, I'm just going to call it powder on there to make the image and then bakes it at 500 degrees, whatever. It's covering up any gloss, dull, whatever. You're literally looking at that banked ink on there. And a lot of people don't get that. Whereas traditional press, gloss versus dull, there is a difference. The ink's drying into the paper. More of that gloss versus dull shows through. Whereas if you design something, cover the entire page, with color, image, whatever, you'd be lucky to tell me after I print it. If I printed it on gloss and dull, you'd be lucky to tell me which one is gloss, which one is dull, because it's kind of sitting on top of the paper, if that makes sense. And it kind of cover it. I shouldn't say ruins the effect of gloss, but they both kind of come out somewhat glossy, if that makes sense. But not annoying glossy, just digital glossy, that vibrant.
With the covers though, I do like my gloss on the cover.
Yeah, and this is why I like digital. Is like I like digital because I feel like I get the glossy look even on dull paper, but without the annoying gloss look. Does that make sense? Without all of the
without that glare.
Without the glare, the reflection. And so like I say, we mostly, I mean, 95% just run just dull paper on the digital. The digital seems to like it better, and plus in the end you're getting the digital look, which is that nice vibrant color anyways.
Now, speaking of the vibrant color, you're able to actually print an extra layer of clear ink on there.
Yeah, the Xerox Iridesce, we bought it with the separate stations for the specialty inks, so we can do. So let me backtrack here now that I've kind of trashed on PMS colors a little bit. This we did buy this press that does have specialty inks in it. That we've got gold, silver, white, and 2 different types of clear, a dull and then a high gloss clear. And so you have to build your files a specific way for it to work on the machine. But if you do build it in a specific way, it recognizes that in InDesign, Illustrator, wherever, that, oh, hey, this is gold. And it's like you look under a loop. It's like you got liquid gold on there. Same with the silver. The clear, to be honest, I don't like it when people have like flooded with clear. It doesn't look more shiny, glossy to me. If anything, it almost takes away the clear on our press. I actually like more for watermarking. That's what I was working for. I like to do that for watermarking. Just little things that your eye catches it, and it's like, oh, wow, that stands out. And like I've used it in designs where there was like an eyeball or something, like an animal's eyeball, threw a little clear on top of there. Yeah,
so more of an accent.
There you go. It reflects the light a little bit where people see it and they're like, oh, they look at it as glossy. I'm not sure it actually makes it glossier, but it like reflects light more, I think. So it's some fun little tools. So there's our new PMS colors is gold, silver, white, and 2 clears that people can play with. And the cost does go up. So a lot of times people will only use it on the cover, like say on the outside cover, just to kind of create some, and then on the inside, they don't do that because, I mean, it can get as high as, probably 50 cents per page if you flooded it enough with golds and silvers. And because, I mean, they're nice golds and silvers. They almost look like somebody poured speckled gold on there. Yeah, it's bad terminology for it. But yeah, it looks good.
You were saying you have white. You don't actually need to add in that white color and stuff like that when you're dealing with just the regular printing. You can just essentially leave it blank.
You can, yeah. White, it's one of those that we rarely use, but we do have some colored stock. I mean, we can get black stock and we, print white over the top of it. That white, bounces off, stands out on that black paper. It's kind of rare. We found that the gold and the silver and the clear are definitely the winners because most people are printing on white paper. It's not worth the cost usually to print on black paper or these other colored ones. Plus the paper companies, it's been rough the last few years. They're discontinuing a lot of those lines as well. So it's getting harder and harder. I just see it going down to a few color choices and then white paper. It seems like it's going that way, which is fine. You can make up for that color.
So I could do like a really dark black kind of cover and then like a gold signature.
Yeah. Yep.
Cool. Or silver.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah. I was playing with some today. Actually, I was playing with my business cards just for the heck of it, trying to figure out how to throw some gold and silver in there and make it, all cohesive with the colors that we already have. The more of it you use, the more you notice it. If you have just like a little thin line, probably not going to notice it. I mean, yeah, it'll look gold or silver, but you're not going to catch that like, oh, that is, that's some gold right there. Whereas if you did something with, some good space to it, you're able to see the reflection, things like that, and it's going to stand out than just like CMYK printed on there. Someone's going to be like, oh, they got some gold lettering on there.
What exactly are bleed lines or trim lines?
Okay, so with any finished product, you've got usually the final step, before packaging would be the 3-knife cutter. Just with print, with paper, things move around, not to a huge degree, but something can shift a 32nd of an inch, 16th of an inch sometimes. If you don't have that image going out further than where it is intended to be cut, you run the risk of having, like say with the magazine, it ends here. You've got red going to it. If you build the red right to where it's going to cut and you don't build it further, you run the risk of it just being off, just a hair, and you've got a white line down your page now, which looks really tacky. So the rule is any color, any image that touches the edge of where it's actually going to cut, you have to keep going with it or keep it in 1/8 of an inch. Yeah, 1/8 of an inch is probably safe, even, more if possible, because things do shift around. And the closer you get to that edge, say you had a box that wasn't touching the edge, but it was right to the edge, and you thought you were tricky, and you're like, okay, I'm having just a 16th inch border. I guarantee it's not going to, on all issues. Some of them may hit, especially when you start getting into printing hundreds of them. Things do move around just slightly. They come back in, they come back out. That's where that bleed, you just have to think in your head like, okay, if this doesn't hit perfectly, that box is going to look, to the eye, it's obviously going to look off. Rather, as if you pulled it down just a little bit, left yourself some space, your eye has a little bit harder time being like, oh, that's off just a 30-second, or that's off. Yeah. Or like I say, just bleed it out, like you were asking. Bleed it out, past the crop marks. We need crop marks. That's where we know where it's going to trim. Color goes out with those crop marks, and then, and you get a nice print.
Now, with that proof that you send out, you'll actually see the cut marks, right?
Yeah, we actually have a program that puts like a dotted blue line. And so it's a cyan dotted blue line that you can actually see, oh, that's where it's going to cut. And it's nice because visually right off the bat, you can see, oh, they didn't put bleed there. They didn't put bleed there because that image will stop right where that dotted blue line is. And then they know that they need to go back, stretch it just a little bit more. You don't need a ton. 1/8 inch all the way around is plenty.
Like, I'm a creator and I create something the exact size that it's to be printed and cut and everything like that. And I send it to you. Is there anything you guys can do to help accommodate that, to add the bleed or...
Oh, yeah. So yeah, there is. Most people don't like it though, just because, the biggest thing, we have two options. We can either under trim, so you're not going to get the size that you intended. So, final product, we're just going to trim it a little bit shorter everywhere. So instead of being 8.5 by 11, it's going to be just under that. That way we kind of make some bleed, if that makes sense. Or the other option is we still give you the exact 8.5, 11 size you wanted, but we have to take each page and blow it up, 102%, 101%. The danger there
so you're
is
increasing the size a little bit.
Yeah, danger there is usually people love to build text right to the edge of pages, and then you run the risk of having text cut off, important image, whatever. And not even totally, just enough that it looks tacky, especially if people are running text way too close to the sides. And that's where it comes into more design too. You got your safe zone. If people stay in the safe zone, we're usually okay jumping that up 100, sorry, when I say 101%, I mean 1%. So we're taking that image and we're making it 101% or 102% of what it is. So we're not actually, blowing up a whole 100%.
This is a note to all you comic creators. If you're creating on the Bristol board, it will show you. It will give you bleed. Use it.
Yeah, use it. Yeah, and some people, here's the other thing too, is we'll get files, not a lot, but quite often that, I don't know if it's just laziness, they'll do bleed on 2 or 3 things and then just drop the ball on all the other sides and think like, well, at least I got it on that. And it's like, well, yeah, I guess you got those 3 things covered, but you missed the other 4 things that are now going to have a white line or, if you're going to do it, you might as well just do it right, have bleed everywhere or no bleed, keep it in, have white around the edge of the sheet. I think it looks better with just bleed everywhere myself, but that's an artistic thing.
We see a lot of early digital files with a resolution of like 72 pixels per inch, but printing starts at 150 DPI or dots per inch. What can you tell us about the various resolutions?
Yeah, so like you say, 150, 300 is what we'd prefer. But having said that, me personally, having run a press, done graphics, all of that, sometimes people do make a bigger deal out of it than it really is. With this disclaimer, so say, look, I've seen a lot of 72 DPI images print just fine, but here's the gotcha: they didn't enlarge it at all. It's 5.5 by 5.5, 72 DPI. They didn't try to enlarge it, because the second you start doing that, artifacts going crappy, now. But I'm also not saying use 72 DPI artwork either. I mean, there is a difference, but sometimes I think people get a little bit more scared. If you have an older file, oftentimes it can print and still look fine, but shoot for the higher. That's all I can say.
Well, I've seen a lot of comic creators that have been creating since kind of the early days of internet, where they're like, this is specifically for the internet. And hey, after years, let's get this printed. And I always tell people, you can shrink an image, you can't blow it up.
There you go.
But now there's so many different AI image enhancers, which
and look, I've used
a lot of them are free too.
I've used the Photoshop tool for years too. I forget bicubic versus I've used those to enlarge images too, and I've got away with it. So it's really kind of, if you know what you're doing, you can get away with quite a bit. I think people sometimes get a little scared that like, oh no, this is never going to print fine, and then we print it for them and they're like, oh, it looks fine. But again, like you said, don't enlarge unless you have some tools, you know what you're doing, because then it goes mushy, soft, artifacty.
Another thing I've run into with some various comic creators is they have these file sizes that are so massive, and then you open it up and look, and it's like, this is 1200 DPI. Like, is there a point where you just as the viewer cannot see a difference? Like, it's once it hits that, say, 300,
depending the rip system that it's going through, the press, whatever, oftentimes that stuff's being ignored and it's going out at 300 DPI. Do you know what I mean? I argued with a client for years. He would send over stuff at 1200 DPI. I would let him know the rip system we were using at the time was dumbing it down to 300 DPI. It was literally useless. He felt though that he could tell a difference. He wasn't accepting that, like, in the end, it was still being shot to the press at 300 DPI, and that 1200 DPI file this is back in the day. It was hard even getting that file over to us. You'd have to bring over, a literal hard drive because those files were so big, these magazines, and trying to get him to understand nobody's going to see this ever. Nobody's going to see the difference between you building in 1200 DPI versus 300. They're just not going to. There's overkill. There's definite overkill. And look, and I've argued with only a handful, and there may be some out there, you're not going to see the difference. You might trick yourself that you're going to see the difference. I do not think you're going to see the difference. I've been on mini press. This is my 5th print shop that I've worked at, Flexo, Offset that I'm doing now, and it's just overkill. That's all I have to say about that, yeah. So if I made people mad, sorry.
So what kind of file types will the typical printer be able to take? Or, I mean, the graphic artist at least be able to take?
It's interesting over the years because, when going back to like early 2000, the mid 2000s, it was different than what we want now and what most printers want now. Most of us just want a PDF. If you can get us a PDF with crop marks and bleeds, we are just, we're happy. We no longer want, your packaged InDesign file. We run into the font problems. We run into all sorts, missing links. Just send us a PDF. We want a PDF. Now, having said that, if you don't know how to make a PDF, we can talk you through it. I mean, I'm learning Procreate with the tattooing thing. It even will send a PDF. I don't think it does crop marks and bleeds, but
that's one thing I wish Procreate did.
Yeah.
Oh man.
I mean,
I wish they did.
It worked out if you do it right and you build your page. If you're building 8.5 by 11, you actually build it. 8.75 by 11.25, and just manually ruler off your areas that's going to be cut off with bleed. So you can actually get ahead of the game, building your page just a little bit bigger. You can draw guides in there, right?
Yeah. So what I ended up doing a long time ago was I created a page that inside I, created a new layer that had these guidelines. And then, so I had the bleed, I had the file size, and then I had the margins in order to keep everything inside. And then I would store that on Procreate, and I'm going to do another comic page. I would duplicate that and then start messing in there, and then just hide that one layer.
Well, I'm realizing you could do it where you don't even have to hide that layer. You could literally build pages with crop marks, like with a fine line. You could build crop marks. You build your page a little bit bigger, make sure your crop marks aren't touching like that. A lot of people make that mistake. You need to leave, you need to leave some space where it's actually going to cut right here versus cutting right there. But yeah, you could actually, I didn't think about that. Yeah, you could build your page bigger, build some crop marks in there and use that as your master template where exported as a PDF, you have crop marks, you have bleed. Yeah, so there's ways to work around it. It's a little bit more pain in the butt to set up at first, but once you get it set up, like you said, you've got a master template that you can build everything to. Makes it easier for the printer.
So if somebody did send you something like a bunch of JPEGs or
sure,
PNGs or even Procreate file.
If you're in Procreate, it's literally just one other click to send it as a PDF. So even Photoshop files, PSD files, InDesign files, we would rather not, though. Most people forget to send links, fonts, all of that, and then we do run into font errors a lot. Just most printers now, they're just going to beg you for a PDF because it's just a safe file we can grab, we can run through our RIP system, send you a proof. It's going to show how that PDF is going to be flattened. You'll see if anything changes versus just a lot of errors that could go wrong by the client sending us their, I'll call them the raw files. A PDF is just a nice, safe file.
So you were saying it has font problems if they would send you an InDesign file or something along those lines. What kind of font problems do you mean?
Potentially, depending what, font software, I think we use Font Reserve. Sometimes there's conflicting fonts. Fonts are a pain in the butt, let's be honest, especially like a print company like us where we have like a gazillion fonts. Sometimes getting them to install to not conflict with another font that we have I'll never understand fonts, I'll be honest. As a graphic designer, it just, there's one of those things that when they pop up as problems, it's just, it's a pain. And here's the deal. All it would have taken, so you're on your computer, you're working in InDesign, everything's working flawlessly for you. If you just simply do a save as PDF, it just, it potentially saves hours of somebody on the other end just trying to get your InDesign file open again. So it's like, why wouldn't you just, and potentially moving something around that you don't see. This has happened before. A graphic artist opens it up. They think that it opened up fine. Well, something moved, different versions, whatever. And this has really happened. Fonts drop off, color changes, it gets printed, and the client's like, oh, that's not what I sent you. And technically it's not what they sent us, but for some reason, us opening up on our end, it just sends PDF.
I usually will do, like, when it comes to lettering specifically, I will always use like a vector. Like a vector program for it, Illustrator or something. I just want that nice, crisp, clean lettering. And then, of course, save it.
Sure. Yeah.
As an Illustrator file and then a PDF.
And if you get rid of the font, you create outlines, turn it into actual vector art. There you go. Problem's gone. But again, if you can do that, you can also do a save as PDF versus packaging up a whole InDesign file. Did I get all the links in there? If you send a PDF, it's done. You can open up your PDF that you're about to send us, look at it. Yep, everything made it in there. Kaboom. You know that on our end, when we open it up, we're going to be looking at the exact same thing you're looking at. Plus, a graphic artist can't accidentally open it up on our end. Look, we've all accidentally clicked something, not realized it moved something, whatever, it eliminates the opportunity for errors.
Kind of moving on to, other stuff that's printed. Outside of just printing comics, you as a printing company, you're able to do so much more. When choosing a printing company, is there something you would want to look for? Like, I want to be able to make sure I have my shirts, hats, banners, and stuff like that. Is that a possibility to get it in one place and just everything I need for a convention, from comics to just a setup?
As everybody knows, the big thing now, the word branding, it's thrown around, but it is important. Branding involves, everything from your business cards, like you said, to your shirt, to your hat, to your pamphlets, to your everything. You want people to see, your logo or whatever and realize, oh, that's so-and-so. Everybody recognizes the Nike logo. And it's not just on one thing. It's, they've got it on everything. So like for example, we can get you custom apparel to include hats, T-shirts, jackets, and we can get the nice stuff too. The Columbia, the North Face, all of that. Those obviously would still have the Columbia logo on them, but we could put your logo underneath, things like that. And then printing business cards, letterhead. We do a lot of envelope printing. We do a lot of direct mailing. So, you send us your Excel spreadsheet of people that you're mailing to. We're able to,
So that kind of goes back to like Kickstarter and stuff. If I have a Kickstarter going and, these are the people who ordered everything, you can actually...
Yeah, we just need an Excel spreadsheet. It ties in with our post office software. It spits us out the rate, how much it's going to be, where it's going. We're able to print labels off, print and package to those people. And even print on demand. We do a lot of magazines that even go internationally. And so, they've got like a whiteout label. We're actually able to imprint, the addresses directly from the Excel spreadsheet right on there, mail them right from there. We take them to the post office in bundles based on zip codes, we do quite a bit of mailing. So I probably
Are you able to mail outside the U.S.?
Yeah, we do We do international. It gets a little, I'll be honest, international gets a little tricky, but yeah, we can. We don't do a whole lot of international. That's all I'm going to say on that.
So many creators have so many stories of, okay, our print runs or our campaign's done. All right, now we finally got everything back from the printer. Here's
You gotta,
3 all-nighters in a row as we're packaging up everything and shipping them all out.
Sure, yeah.
So now that's all on you guys to do that.
Yeah.
They can just sit back and laugh at you.
For sure. Yeah. And everything, look, it costs to be cool. So there's a price for everything. But yeah, we would have hand bindery people, doing that, a group of people who would get together, package those, mailing labels, etc. So yeah.
Without giving out any names or anything like that.
Yeah.
Or getting anybody fired or anything. You've got to have some really good stories of all your times in printing. You got to tell me one or two.
Oh my gosh. I wish you would have asked me this before so I could have thought about it. Now.
See, I just want the first one to come to mind.
I can't tell the first one that comes to mind. And I think you know why. Oh, yeah. We printed the phallic book. Oh, I should have brought a copy. Oh, well.
Yeah, I think I have one somewhere upstairs, but
that's the craziest thing we've ever printed. And then besides that, print shops are they're just full of crazy people. Like they're, look, I'm one of them. I'd like to think I'm less crazy, but I'm still, worked at too many.
You got to be a little crazy, to be in this business. This kind of side of the entertainment business, really.
I keep, there's times in my life that I think I'm going to get out of the print world, and then I just keep getting older and older. Like I say, I'm almost 50 now, and I'm like, are you getting out of the print world? and do I even want to? Because it's all I've known, since graduating high school all those years ago, and I like print, and so sometimes I'm like, why would I get out of print? I like it. But it also drives you insane. It's a crazy world. I'm stuck in print. There you go.
That's all the questions I have for today. So I appreciate you. Thank you so much.
This was great because one day I might be on Joe Rogan, and this prepped me for it. It felt like a Joe Rogan interview. I'm ready for his questions. Look at that. Oh, it's not going to stay. That is a second place prize right there in the Eastern Idaho State Fair.
Weren't you the judge that year? No, I'm kidding. It
was. I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding. I was. Not that anybody knows. Kidding.
Was that for oil painting, or was that composition, or what's that?
Yeah, oil painting. Yeah, so I made my dad enter, so I got my dad back into oil painting. He hasn't done it like in 30 years, and I've only started a couple years ago. And then I made my son do it too. He painted a watermelon with me, so I got a second prize. My dad got a third prize, and my son got like an honorable mention. Got fun. Wow. So 3 generations at the Eastern Idaho State Fair. And
so who took first place? Did you? Are they still around after winning first place?
I didn't look at the first place. Funny story.
3 generations could team up pretty quick.
That's true. So funny story though. So in fact, right? Holy cow. Here we go. So this here. Okay. So this is a really bad. Okay. So this is a photograph I took, and I won first prize in the Eastern Idaho State Fair for professional photography. Mm-hmm. So I won it. First prize. Cool picture. The guy let me paint him up. He's Native American. He let me do all the makeup, everything. Shot it. Won first prize, okay? So next year, the year after that, I enter. Different judge. I don't know these judges. I win first prize again, and it pisses off everybody because it was little Sandon from Blackfoot with no photography studio, no anything, and I won the Eastern Idaho State Fair professional division twice in a row. And so some of the people threw a fit, and they stopped even entering in the fair because they were just like they weren't really happy.
Come on.
And shortly after, I stopped photographing. I'd been photographing for 15 years, weddings, everything. And I was I'm kind of weird. When I do a hobby for a while and then I give it up and it's just dead to me. And so photography's been dead to me for about 10 years. Yeah. One day I might.
We're talking about that earlier today.
Yeah. Yeah. But I switched to other things. So.
See, you're also into tattoos. What can you tell us about that?
Yeah. My stepson bought me a tattoo machine for Christmas because he has tattoos, and he just begged me to give him some. And I don't know. I started doing it. Within a couple of weeks, I bought like nicer machines, and then pretty soon I bought a tattoo table, and then pretty soon I had bought like way more than we talk about to our wives. And I've only given about, I don't know, 30, 35 tattoos, but it's fun. I don't know. It's the latest thing that I am doing. My oil paintings kind of taken a back seat now to doing tattoos. So I go in cycles with these things. I like the expensive hobbies.
What is it about tattooing that you like?
I think it's that it's a challenge. It's the same way that it's the same reason I took up oil. It's something I didn't understand the process, and I really liked the challenge of it. And I don't know, I just kind of have my own style, which is kind of fun, especially in painting. There's no really right or wrong. And with tattooing, I don't know, it's challenging. You got to be more precise. You've got to know what you're doing, it's permanent, which is scary. That part I'm doing better, but I'm still getting over that it's permanent. Yeah. I think I like the challenge though. And there's the satisfaction afterwards that, like, I don't know. It's kind of like doing, you're doing artwork on somebody and they're walking away really happy with it. And you're like, oh, well, that's forever. So because my kids are, when I die, these paintings are going probably straight to the garbage, but like that tattoo is going to die with somebody. So there you go. They're stuck.
They say you can't take it with you. Yes, you can. Tattoos.
I hear, maybe it was you or somebody else was showing me that it's starting to be a thing now that when people die, they're actually cutting out the skin that they have the tattoos, and they're saving.
That wasn't me. Oh, no.
They're actually, they're framing it and keeping those tattoos that were on those people. And I'm like, oh, that's fascinating. Yeah.
So they could just have a chunk of grandma's skin on their wall?
Yeah, because that artwork. Yep, they just take that. Yeah. I don't know who it showed me the other day, but I was like, wow, that's a next level. I don't want that.
Let's just go full on Ed Gaines, and I want my tattoo to be the center of the lampshade.
Right? Yeah, I don't know. I'm not on board with it.
Yeah, no, that's a little too creepy for me.
Too much. What? Yeah, no.
Now, if you did have like a copy like the Necronomicon, put that on there.
Yeah. Oh, to bind a book with, that would still be,
that would be even creepier.
But to go back to answer your question, I don't know. I don't
even remember what the question was.
Like, what I enjoy about tattooing, and like, honestly, it scares the crap out of me, but I don't know. It is fun. It's like it's something new to learn. It's creative. I get to do art. I might be able to answer it in a couple of years, because right now I'm still like, what am I doing? Like, why am I doing this? But it's fun. It's fun though.
I'm gonna definitely edit this part out. All right.
Yes. Yeah. Oh yeah, we'll both go to jail.
Like I said, we're gonna edit it out. Nobody will see it but me.
It's not annoying. Just you can tell that it's.
Hold on one second.
Someone is at the front door.